Hello there, hope you're doing well. Mike Shreve here. Let's jump right into it. Today we're going to be talking about how to make selling significantly easier for yourself and for a team. Now, whether you have a team now or not, I know a lot of people in this space, their goal is to someday not be the only ones selling, right? To either hire a sales team or just to reduce the need to have sales conversations, right? A lot of people want to go to chat, automations, etc. Now, we're not going to be talking about scripting. We're not really even going to be talking about tactics or tricks or secrets or anything like that. Instead, we're going to be talking about a very powerful principle. Now, this principle is, to be frank, it's much more, I think the word powerful kind of ironically has become quite weak in this world because everything's so powerful. But in this case, the principle we're going to be talking about actually extends and expands beyond tactical improvements to your sales ability. So sure, you can always improve your scripting. Sure, you can always improve your tone, how you handle a call, etc. And that might give you a 10% lift on what you're doing, or a 15% or a 20% lift. But what we're going to be talking about today, and this powerful principle and the changes you can make in your business, it gives you a 50% lift, a 100% lift. It can double your sales, not in 6 to 12 months, but as soon as you begin implementing these changes. And the reason that this principle is able to do that all comes back to something that I kind of accidentally stumbled upon. And I really do mean that, not just in the webinar way, So I started in 2007, right? I am naturally not inclined towards selling. Right? When I very first started in 2007, I was incredibly shy. I had just come off of being homeless, right? So I went from living in a tent in Washington Park in Portland, Oregon, to all of a sudden having to have these conversations with people, aka clients, who I looked at and I thought they were incredibly rich, right? So there was all sorts of internal stuff, shame, embarrassment, etc. So I went into sales thinking it's something I have to do. And I read all the books so that I could really focus on the tactics and the techniques. I just thought to myself, if I just know the right technique, if I just know the right tactic, that will somehow make selling less anxious, frustrating, high pressure, etc. Now, I don't know if you've ever felt this before. It's that feeling of the night before you have the sales call, and you would describe the feeling as pending doom, or you lose sleep, or something like that, right? That was me every single day for like the first few years of my business. And to be honest with you, that was fine. It was miserable in the sense that that's not a very good way to live life, but I was able to function, right? I mean, I was closing deals, I was making sales, I was doing 6 figures a year. So to me, it was just sort of like this necessary evil that you just dealt with as a business owner, just this idea of selling. Then I started working with people like Mel Robbins and Brendan Burchard and Tony Robbins and Russell Brunson and other people who you look at externally and you think to yourself, wow, they're incredible salespeople. Look at how much they've generated as people who can sell stuff to others. And I wanted to figure out, like, how do they do that, right? By this point in my career, I had very lofty goals, and I was like, how do they do that? And so I started to deconstruct what their sales processes, what their scripting was, what their tone, how did they show up to calls, and I noticed something very interesting. They were using the same scripts I was using. They had the same tone and pitch that I had. They were overcoming the same objections that I was trying to overcome, and yet they were outselling me by a wide mile, right? Like by a lot. And so I really started to ask myself, how is it that we can be using the same scripts, right? Because they're the same scripts from the same books, from the same teachers, from the same mentors. How is it that we could have access to the same information, knowledge, coaching, etc., and I'm still nervous, anxious, my sales calls convert lower than theirs, etc. And it really came down to a realization that I had, which is when Brendan Burchard is selling someone, when Tony Robbins is selling someone, or Tony Robbins' team is selling someone, when Russell Brunson was selling someone, now Russell Brunson's team is selling someone. The difference is not the script, it's not the tone, it's not the approach, it's not the ability to overcome objections. It's that their selling environment was different than my selling environment. And the big aha moment that I had was that the selling environment is not only important, it's actually more important than the script, than the tonality, then ability to overcome objections, etc. Now, what do I mean by selling environment? Let me give you a very simple example of two different selling environments. Environment A is I go door to door, knocking on people's doors, trying to get them to purchase a vacuum. That's sales environment number one. Now just think for a second what I have to do in that moment to make a sale. And think about what's going on. I'm interrupting them. I'm telling them they need a vacuum. I need to be slightly aggressive. I need to be, I know I'm going to face massive rejection. There may even be some moments during that sales process where there's tension and, you're upsetting people and etc. That's environment A. Environment B, selling the exact same vacuum. And I'm the exact same person, except now I'm selling at the vacuum store where people have left their house, got in their car, drove across town, and showed up to what? Shop for vacuums. Now, what kind of sales process do I need to engage in then? Well, it's more of a kind of customer service. It's more of a, what are you looking for? It's more of a interview style sales process. Now, it's highly likely that you already know mentally this basic principle. And the principle being, the better the sales environment, the easier the selling becomes. And you may know that because it's marketing 101, right? It's the idea of the inbound marketing, and everybody wants inbound marketing. Don't go chasing after people, have people come chase after you. If you get your messaging right, the right people will show up. All of these factors and elements come into play. The problem is that a lot of that inbound advice is also incorrect. I can tell you for a fact that the people that I've listed above, for the most part, use very different inbound strategies to set up the selling environment that they exist in. So let me share with you some of the things that I've learned and have implemented in my business to change that sales environment to the point now where I myself don't even have to sell at all. I don't even take sales calls because my sales environment is so strong and so easy to sell in that I can just hire other people to sell for me. See, again, this is one of those things where a lot of people think the secret to hiring a salesperson is to find the perfect salesperson. What I'm saying is that the secret to hiring a salesperson and making that process easy for yourself is to make your selling environment so easy to sell in that you don't need to find the quote-unquote perfect salesperson. Because by the way, they don't exist. And if they did, they would probably be too expensive for you to afford them anyways. Right? And this is a common thread through this. We're going to go on a little side note here. This is a common thread in all of your hiring. If you have to hire someone and the only people that you can hire because of the nature of the job that you're hiring for are really, really expensive and really, really rare, the problem isn't your hiring process. The problem is the job that you're hiring for. Your business is too complicated. It's too confusing. Just think about McDonald's. They can take any kid off the street in any place in the world and they can all create the same tasting hamburger. That is done on purpose. That wasn't an accident that occurred, right? So when we're thinking about sales and selling and getting ourselves out of the day-to-day of it, we have to understand that it is through the creation of a sales environment, which we'll cover here in a second about what those changes are, a sales environment that you're going to be able to pretty much hire anybody you want. In fact, what you do when you have a strong sales environment is you hire for belief, not necessarily technical skill, which means you can hire from your own audience. And now you have this very easy to sell in environment, and you have people representing you who believe in you and what you're doing, and that combination allows for very, very profitable sales teams. Okay, so sorry about that little side tangent, but let's go back now and talk about what makes strong selling environments. So number one, a really strong selling environment, a requirement, is a never-ending inbound source of inquiries. So let me see if I can explain that. So in my business, every single day, 365 days of the year, people are inquiring to do business with me. Now, the way that we have the inquiry inflow set up is it's either they are booking calls or they are responding and replying to emails. I want to put a special emphasis on the key point of this idea, and it is that it is a constant flow of inquiries. Selling will always be hard for you until you are able to create a consistent inflow. So even if you have inflow, right, there's a lot of people who are doing quote unquote inbound marketing, but it's sporadic. So you get a lot of calls or a lot of inquiries and then none. A lot and then none. That is a contributing element to a poor sales environment. Why? Because it unnecessarily puts pressure on you, oftentimes out of your control, meaning you don't know when the next inbound lead is going to come. And so what happens to your mentality and mindset? It goes into scarcity mode. What happens when you do scarcity mode? Well, now you have anxiety. Now you have fear. Now you have frustration when it doesn't work out. Now you engage in sales tactics, which you yourself don't even feel comfortable engaging in, but you think that's what you have to do because somebody told you that's what you have to do because they also operate sales systems, processes, environments that require that kind of selling because they also don't know when their next inbound lead is going to come and et cetera, et cetera. So you see how it's kind of like this circle. And so when you make the shift to a consistent, never-ending flow of inbound inquiries, what do you think happens? Somebody gets on the phone. What pressure is gone? The pressure of, I have to sell this person right now because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. In my sales team and in my business, once I realized that this is how these really big, amazing clients that I had in the past, how they were operating, I realized that the key to having fun sales calls where there's no pressure, where you can just show up and just be honest, where you can show up and it's not you versus them, it's you just asking some questions. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself. What are you trying to accomplish? Let's see if we're even a good fit together. It starts with the consistent inbound flow of inquiries. Because here's what my sales team experiences on a daily basis. They'll take a call at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they know they have 4 to 6 calls the rest of that day, and they know the day after, there's going to be 4 to 6 more calls, and the day after, 4 to 6 more calls, day after, 4 to 6 more calls, and again, and again, and again, and again. And this isn't just one salesperson, this is across 3 different salespeople. Not only do they see it in their own selling, they see it in each other's selling as a team. And so what do you think happens to their mentality? What do you think happens to my mentality managing that team? We don't have the kind of conversations that some sales teams have, which is you need to crush and squeeze every single call because we don't know when the next call is going to happen. That's just not how we operate. And one of the very interesting things about that is in the help industry. Now, I'm not an expert in anything else, right? I don't know what it's actually like to sell vacuums. Maybe in the vacuum sales world, high pressure sales tactics do in fact out-convert what you might consider less pressury sales tactics. But I've been doing this for 15 years. I have been a part of all sorts of different teams before I struck out on my own. So I did client work for many, many years. And I'm telling you right now that the data does not support the claim that high-pressured sales tactics are more effective than less pressury sales tactics. In fact, in my experience, not just within my own business, but within the business of clients, the less pressure there is in a sales call, the higher earnings per call end up being. So depending on how you measure your sales calls, you can measure the conversion per call, but really what you're most interested in, what actually matters, is how much is earned per call. And it turns out that when you can take a much more coaching/consultative sales position when you're chatting with someone, that you actually end up earning more per call. Now, why is that? Well, because there's a couple things that happen as a secondary benefit. One is you're actually able to raise your prices. So you end up actually being able to charge more because there's higher levels of trust, et cetera, et cetera. And then second is actually because those individuals who buy from you tend to buy again. So if you're not burning bridges in your sales process, it means people come back. And I don't understand how some of these gurus are even staying afloat. I think, you know, I try not to trash people that much anymore, but I used to be way into trashing other people because I've seen behind the scenes of some of these gurus. And I know for a fact that a lot of them just are financially struggling because they engage in these sort of short-term tactics. But I'm telling you right now, like when you burn bridges, you are literally lighting money on fire. I've never understood this obsession with one call close, must call on, and if they don't, then that's not how real people buy. It's not how the real world works. And so so let's bring it all the way back now. When you are in a situation, a sales situation, where there is an inflow of inquiries every single day in your business, you're actually able to truly believe yourself and then impart that belief to your team if you have one to say, look, you guys, we don't have to pressure people. We don't have to use aggressive sleight of hand sales tactics, etc. In fact, we are able to engage in better, more profitable selling because we know there's going to be another call in 20 minutes after this one. There's going to be 4 more calls tomorrow and the day after and the day after and the day after. So step 1, this is like basic step 1 of creating a sales environment in which selling is incredibly easy. It is to get an inflow of, in my opinion, daily inquiries. And I say, never ending for the simple matter of having whatever system in your business you need to build. We recommend acquisition funnels, but whatever system you need to build in your business that allows you to turn it on and keep it on so that you don't have this up and down, up and down, up and down. Okay, so the first step is the inflow. It's one of the things we love helping clients with, right? We love helping them set up their acquisition funnel so they can have that inflow. And that in and of itself makes the sales environment different, right? It changes just what we talked about. Just imagine that in your head for a second. Imagine if that was your business. All right, so the next thing that we need to do to create a better sales environment is to educate before the sales conversation. To educate before the sales conversation. And I'm going to tell you something, and some people listening to this aren't going to like it, but a 30-minute VSL is not educating before the sales conversation. It just isn't. In fact, I would say as a general rule, the more that you can get someone to consume before a sales call, the easier the sale will be. Therefore, by definition, why engage in tactics that reduce the time spent in education for that prospect, right? Why would you be drawn towards a tactic that says we can get a sales call and after they watch a 5-minute video? Do you know what that sales call is going to be like? They don't know who you are. They have no idea whether they should trust you or not. They don't know what you're selling. They don't know why they should buy it. Their list of objections is going to be so long that in that sales environment, by definition, in order to turn a positive ROI, you have to engage in sales tactics and in sales processes, which are, depending on how aggressive you go, questionable. And at the very least, stressful, anxiety creating, unpleasant, bridge burning. These are all words I would use to describe that kind of a sales process. Now let's flip it on its head and show you an example. Now, obviously I'm biased towards this, but a book. If you put a book in someone's hand or a mini course in someone's hand and just say to them, look, go through that first. Just read it. Take you 4, 5, 6, 7 hours to read it. Here's some extra little bonus videos. They're each an hour long, so you'll probably consume about 10 to 15 hours worth of information before you hop on a call with me or my sales team. What do you think the sales environment is going to be like? This, for me, was one of the biggest aha moments. The inbound thing, everybody talks about it, right? It's sort of like, let's just cover our foundation, make sure that everybody knows inbound inquiries every single day, yes. But when I was watching Russell Brunson and Brenda Burchard and Mel Robbins and Tony Robbins, and I was a part of like watching them work and do what they're doing and things like that, I realized the amount of pre-selling that they do is insane. It's insane. I will tell you right now, I in my own business don't do as much pre-selling as I could or should in comparison to them. right? What's one of Russell Brunson's sayings? He's always saying, every single day, go Facebook Live, right? If you've followed Brendan Burchard for any amount of time, he's got millions of views on his YouTube channel. Now, what does all that actually mean? Mel Robbins, same thing, millions of views. Her TED Talk alone was millions of views. Even when I started working with her already, I think it had already gotten to like 10 million views already. What does that actually mean? Is it the volume of views that we're looking for? No. The volume of views are nice, don't get me wrong. A big audience is fantastic, and we'll talk about the demand and supply curve in a second. But what we're talking about now is pre-education. And I want you to think about this for a second. You can go do this right now. Go search Brendan Burchard, and you will find that you have, with just a few clicks of the button, of your mouse, you have the ability to go spend hours with Brendan. Hours. Before you ever buy anything. Before you even buy a book. Then you can what? You can go buy a book. You can buy a mini course. You can buy something. And then you can buy the next course up, and then the next course up, until eventually you get to a point where you can book a call, become a private mastermind client, buy tickets to go to his live event, purchase what he's selling at his live event, etc. That space between stranger to phone call that is filled with content is done on purpose. It's done on purpose. It's not an inefficiency. It's not a mistake, an accident, or something that can be improved. It's done purposefully because that is the best way to sell people. For them to have spent hours and hours and hours before they get to you. We're always talking about how do we scale things? How do we become more efficient? How do we work ourselves out of the stuff that sucks? Well, one of the best ways to become more efficient in selling is to actually make people jump through more hoops before they talk to you. Because it means that by the time they talk to you, they've jumped through a bunch of hoops. They have qualified themselves. They've educated themselves. They show up and say, I love you and what you're doing. So we go back to the question, why engage in tactics and techniques that try to shorten that? That's just internet marketing gurus taking advantage of the fact that you want a shortcut, right? What I'm telling you is that the most successful people don't take the shortcut. They create the content. Now, there's the content that happens before the sale. There's also the content, for example, if you buy a book from someone or you get on their email list, there's the nurture content, right? There's this, what you're listening to now. This is content. You're spending time with me, however you're consuming this. At whatever point in our, you could consider our relationship together, you're now consuming this particular bit of content. That's why when people say, hey, should I try and make my webinar shorter? I don't think so. I want people getting on the phone call with me who have spent hours consuming all sorts of different things, right? And we can break down, you can say, well, for example, Frank Kern's always talking about get people results in advance. This is what he's talking about. Give them something to consume, help them to have breakthroughs, help them to know and understand that you are the person who can help them by helping them, et cetera, and et cetera. Now, there's just one problem with this very wonderful idea, and it is a lot of people struggle to cash flow this. How do you withstand the time from stranger to giving them the space and time they need to consume everything to now they're finally booking a call? It's not going to happen overnight. It's the allure and the appeal of things like VSLs, where it's hammer the internet, they'll watch a 45-minute thing and they'll get on a call with you that afternoon, right? That's the appeal, because people are saying, well, I'll spend the money on ads and by the end of the day I'll close a sale. We all know that's not really actually how it happens, but that's sort of the appeal of that methodology. When we look at this longer sales process, the question is, well, so I'm just going to have to go out and make a ton of content and just wait for people to book a call, and what am I going to do in between that? This is, again, why I prefer acquisition funnels. Because number one, when people pay for something, what do? They consume it faster. When you get a book for free, where does it go? Boop, pop it on the shelf. I'll get to it when I can. When you pay for a book, because you're like, this is the book that I need, what do? You sit down the second you buy it, you start reading. Not only do they consume it faster, they consume it at a much higher by percentage volume. So for example, if you were to look at like YouTube videos versus videos that people paid to watch, a higher percentage of the people who paid to watch them will have completed them than those who just surf and click around on YouTube, right? So this is why I like acquisition funnels. If you don't know what acquisition funnel is, it's basically you do a mini course or a small book, you put it in a funnel, you add a couple other mini courses and etc., tools, etc., and you run it to traffic so that when you're paying to get yourself out there, other people are paying to consume the ideas and content, etc. So it balances itself out. So we're getting faster consumption, a higher volume of consumption, and it's paying for itself. So this idea of changing the sales environment by pre-educating our prospects, getting them to spend tons and tons of time with us and our stuff, it's not about a better webinar script. It's not about writing a better email. It's about changing the value, the perceived value of the content that you're exposing them to. What's a book? A collection of ideas. What's a free YouTube video? Collection of ideas. What's a podcast? Collection of ideas. What's a bonus video? Collection of ideas. But they all are perceived in a different values system to have a certain priority and a certain need to consume, right? It might even be the same ideas in all of those different things. But because you put it in a book and put your name on it, now this is the official thing. Right? You're an author. You put the same ideas in a course, add some spreadsheets and templates and etc. And people are now saying, this is the real deal. It's a course, even though the same ideas could have been as easily shared on YouTube, podcasts, etc. Okay, so if number one is daily inflow of inquiries, number two is pre-education of those prospects that are coming in, then number three, and this is the last one we'll cover for now, there's a whole list of things you can do to change your environment, but I think these are three strong ones that everyone can start doing. Number three is controlling your supply and demand curve. Your supply and demand curve. Number one question we always get when people are wondering, how do I improve my sales? They want to know, how can I get the person, the prospect, to take action, right? It's always that. It's always, how can I get somebody who gets on the phone to make a decision and buy something? How can I get other people to essentially walk themselves into the sale instead of, how do most people experience sales? You're dragging people in. You have to pull them along. That's a bad sales environment. I'm telling you right now, that is not how my sales team, that's not their reality. They don't have to deal with that every single day. My sales team has people showing up, pushing themselves into the sale. How? We create a higher demand for what we do than the supply that we have available. And every single one of the names that I've listed earlier, everybody who understands how this whole game works knows that controlling the supply-demand curve allows you to change the nature of the momentum in a sales environment. In other words, instead of you having to pull people, they will push themselves into what it is that you do. So how do you control supply and demand? Well, number one, I know it sounds so silly and obvious, but number one is you build as big an audience as you possibly can. That everyone's always worried about what's the best funnel, what's the secret hack to da-da-da-da-da. Putting yourself in front of as many people as possible and getting those people to follow or connect with you in some way is significantly smarter, easier, straightforward than trying to squeeze an extra 1% conversion with some of whatever the latest hack is. I'll give you an example. If you can sell 1 in 100, but I can sell 1 in 1,000, there are a couple of ways I can match what you do. And one of the easiest ways, rather than trying to somehow figure out a magic spell to make me 10 times better at selling, I just get an audience 10 times as big as yours. And we're now doing the same units, right? Now you may say, well, good and fun for you, wonderful, but building an audience is super hard. I would suggest that it isn't. In fact, again, not to come back again, there's a reason why after 15 years I'm telling everyone the best thing I've ever discovered is an acquisition funnel. But an acquisition funnel, a book funnel, mini course funnel, whatever you want to call it, if it pays for itself, what are you doing when you're selling a book? You are creating a customer, right? What do customers do? They go on your email list. What happens when somebody's on your email list? You can send them podcasts and YouTubes and whatever you want to do. Just even send them just emails, blog posts, whatever. So if you write a book, put it in a book funnel acquisition type funnel, dollar in, dollar out, and you run that thing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, while you're sleeping, your audience is being built for you. So you don't have to go out and be a social media superstar. I'm not. How many times have you seen my face? Not probably ever. I mean, I have some older pictures. I'm not that person. I'm not going to be a Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm not going to be Grant Cardone. I'm not going to show up in that way. I'll do podcasts and I'll write books because that's all I need to make millions of dollars per year. Because if you put the book in an acquisition funnel, you turn it on, it pays for itself, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People are reading my stuff. They're either loving it or they're hating it, but they paid for it. So it's paying for itself. By them paying for it, they are valuing it in a certain way. So they're actually consuming it. So I have very high consumption rates and people are taking it seriously. Consider this. People are taking notes. How many people take notes on webinars or VSLs? Not very many, right? So people are taking notes on this content. They're really trying to absorb it. They're really trying to get their money's worth. And this is creating fans, audience, etc. It's getting people to buy into ideas. And this is happening 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A little bit of work up front, which has nothing to do with my ability to be a quote unquote star or quote unquote celebrity. I don't do PR. I'm not media trained. I don't do any of that. I just built a mechanism, an asset, something that can do the audience building for me, leveraging pre-recorded, pre-written ideas, aka courses and books. And that's it. And so with that mechanism, demand goes up, literally. And I know my generation overuses this, but this I truly mean, my generation overuses the word literally, but quite sincerely and quite literally, my audience expands in size every single day. And it compounds when I add additional books, courses, etc., and create new assets, right? So at the time of this recording, I believe we have 3 or 4 acquisition funnels out in the marketplace, running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, bringing people into my world, learning who I am, creating the audience, etc. We create occasional podcasts. That's my preferred method. I just pop my phone on, record, basically just like what you're listening to now, have the team set it up on a podcast. We send out an email. There's our nurture content. We stay front of mind of our audience so that demand is constantly and consistently increasing over time. Now that's the demand side of the supply and demand curve. What about the supply side? Well, the supply side is really quite simple. And there's people think you have to engage in scarcity, like fake scarcity. I'm suggesting you don't. In fact, I don't like scarcity. Personally, I hate it. We have 2 times a year, we will raise prices on our stuff. And that's one of the ways that we do scarcity. It's like, but it's real. It's, hey, in a couple of days, everything's going to be more expensive. And that's about the only scarcity we use. We don't do product launches. We don't do open close cards. Our stuff you can buy pretty much anytime, all the time. But what we do is we charge premium prices. Now this by definition constricts the supply because not everyone can necessarily afford the premium prices. And what you'll find is that the higher you raise your prices, the lesser the supply of what it is that you're able to deliver on for that price. So I know some of you very smart people are saying, hold on, if you increase the price, doesn't that reduce the demand? And what I'm suggesting is that by raising the price and wanting to deliver on a higher price, you're actually creating offers which are, like, I'll give you a very, very good example. Dan Kennedy, right? He's one of the godfathers of marketing, direct response marketing, one of the, very prominent and a pioneer in a lot of ways. He charges $100,000 for his sales letter. And I know because I worked with a client who hired him to come in and do this. Now let's think about that for a second. Is it because he only wants to write one sales letter a year? No, he can probably write a sales letter a week, and he could probably do $100,000 a week. But because he has so many other offers in his business that bring him so much margin, the core, that particular offer, he's able to increase his prices so much that he can tell himself, I'm only going to do this 4 times a year. So let me see if I can explain it in another way within my own business. There's lots of things that you can buy from us in our business. We have books and we have mini courses, we have do-it-yourself, we have done with you, and there's varying prices and all of that. At the very, very top, there are two different offers. One is a partnership offer where we just work with people and it's an equity situation. It's basically consulting for equity. I take 2 of those people per year, sometimes not even 2. I mean, it has to be like the absolute perfect situation for me and the person. It's a very long sales process. There's only 2 people a year that I'm willing to do that with, right? And then we have, and of course, that ends up being a lot of money per year in terms of what that deal ends up working out to be. Now that's 2 people per year when more than 100 people per day are becoming customers in my business. So we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of people being added to my business every quarter, every month, throughout the year, and only 2 of them are qualified to be equity clients, right? Consulting for equity clients. Then I have an offer below that, which is private consulting, which is there's no equity involved. Private consulting, it's a kind of like a group program. I only take 15 people per year in that particular program. You apply at the beginning of the year, and the promise is I'll double your business in 12 months or less. There's just 15 of us. It's way better than a mastermind. It's small group together, plus one-on-one elements, etc. It is very, very expensive. It's very expensive. It's more expensive than a mastermind to be a private consulting client. Now, why is that? Is it because I just went to the market and threw out a random number? No. It's because I raised prices on everything else I have to sell so that at that very highest level of what I can offer people, I myself am comfortably able to create a very limited supply and still turn out extraordinary margins, profits, etc. I don't need to take 60 private consulting clients per year because my other offers are so well priced. The offers in which I'm not even involved in are so well priced that 15 is more than enough for my personal income goals and margin, etc. I only need to take 2 consulting for equity clients. And to be frank, I don't even need to do it. Some years I don't take any, some years I take 1, some years I take 2. And it's not about, how do I explain this? It's not about being a diva or anything like that. It's about the foundation of the business. The selling environment around those particular offers, which are my highest value offers, the thing that I do, it's the most of my skill, it's the biggest outcome I can deliver. I don't have to do a lot of them because the rest of my business is properly priced. I have put other offers, nearly all of them that the team fulfill without me, and I have priced them appropriately so that at the tippity top, the supply can be very, very low. And so now we have this daily growing demand by new people coming into your business every single day. And to be fair, a shrinking supply of the top highest level of what it is that I do for people. And what do you think that does to the selling environment? Well, I can tell you for consulting for equity and for my private consulting group, it is a tryout. And I don't mean this in an arrogant way, but you have to prove to me that it's worth working with you. That's how different the selling environment is compared to 2009 when I tried to first sell consulting for equity, which was a disaster. It was horrible because I was basically in a situation where I was willing to work with anyone who said yes. Very different terms and very different everything, right? Why? Well, I didn't have all this stuff in place that I'm telling you now. I didn't have a daily flow of inbound inquiries. I didn't have the ability to pre-educate my prospects, pre-selling, and I didn't have control of my supply and demand curve. Okay, so we've covered a lot. There's a lot of ideas here. Some of them are difficult to grasp per se because they are the tip of the iceberg in the sense that once you start to explore this idea more, you will find there's a whole world behind making that thing happen. And there's a lot of, and the good thing about that, so the good thing about the fact that we only covered 3 of how many possible potential ways to change your selling environment, and each of those can be explored further in depth and etc. The good thing about that is that it's achievable. If I were to say, here's the 3 things, and if you don't know how to do it, you're screwed, and you'll never find out because there's no more, like, either you get it or you don't, that would be something to worry about. That would be something to worry about. The good news is that to achieve these things, all you need to do is just to learn a little bit more. As additionally, a lot of the things that we talked about today, they're actually easier to do than somehow being magically better at selling in a rough environment. And this is the last thing I want to leave with you before we close today. You are probably a lot better at selling than your environment is allowing you to be. Or let me put it in a different way. You probably aren't bad at selling. It's probably just your sales environment. The good news is you control your sales environment. It is the one thing you can control. You're never going to be able to control what other people say, do, want to buy, etc. But you can change the dynamic of that moment we call a sales conversation. And I encourage you to do so. One of the things that we do here at Peaceful Profits is help people to do that exact thing. We do it in many different ways. One, we help you make better offers. Sometimes, we didn't even talk about it, but sometimes your offer is the reason that your sales conversations are so difficult. We help people make better offers. We help people to create acquisition funnels, which change the nature. It brings that daily inbound flow of inquiries. It allows for pre-selling and education, and it creates demand every single day, that momentum. And then, of course, when we work with offers, what do? We help to create that scarcity through proper pricing and etc. And then, of course, we also help people, once you get to a certain point, build and hire out sales teams so you don't even have to be a part of the selling environment as long as you have built one that salespeople could thrive in. If you're interested in getting help in any of these things, simply go to peacefulprofits.com/call. Again, that's peacefulprofits.com/call. We have all sorts of different options: do it yourself, done for you, do it with you, coaching, etc. and etc. peacefulprofits.com/call. Come see what our selling environment is like. See what it's like to not have stuff rammed down your throat, because we don't have to. We have daily inbound inquiries. We do a lot of pre-education with our prospects. We do a significant amount of supply and demand control within our little universe. And as a result, our salespeople can truly help you when they have a conversation. And it's a great thing as a business owner to know that's the kind of sales process and sales experience that we're giving to, in many cases, strangers, customers, etc. All right, my friends, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you in the next one.